Now we go. Data spaces for Jewish heritage and memory thinking, access, experience, and infrastructures. My name is Pavel Kats. I'm running Jewish Heritage Network in the Netherlands. And my role today is to provide some larger context to the great projects that you will hear about from our three speakers. And I hope to give you a bit of a different, hopefully, perspective on data spaces than what you heard in this room so far. So, no good presentation on Jewish heritage starts without a Jewish story. And our story is about Eruv. So, for those of you who don't know about what Eruv is an area in which you are basically, you don't have to follow the strict rules of what you can and what you need, what you can and what you can't do on Shabbat, on Saturday. So on Saturday there are certain rules, you're not allowed to do work, but then the question arises and then definition of what work is very wide. And for example, you can't carry things from one place to another because that's work. Then you might ask, okay, so what do we do, if you want to carry something from your bedroom to your kitchen? Then you're of course allowed because it's within your living space. And then you could ask, what if I carry something to my neighbor, or to across the street, because you need to maintain life on Saturday, right, on Shabbat. So the Jewish law, halakha, invented this thing, Eruv, which is basically stands for your jurisdiction. It's a jurisdiction within which you are allowed to carry things. And in the old times, there was a wall around a courtyard or around a Jewish city, and that wall would constitute this jurisdiction in which you can carry things. And now in modern Israeli cities or in some Jewish neighborhoods in Europe, you can see a wire which is hanging on the poles and around the city, and that signifies Eruv. So our story goes like this, that several Jewish residents of a shtetl in Poland, they want to do an Eruv, and they come to the landlord who owns the land, and they tell him this whole story, what this Eruv, and they need to do it in order to maintain normal life on Saturday. And they say, we want to do Eruv around our settlement, shtetl. And then the landlord says, okay, good, so what do you need to do? And they say, well, it's very simple. You basically take this wire and you go around the neighborhood and you say a certain blessing with a rabbi, and then we are done. And he says, okay, and then how does it help you? And they say, yeah, because when we see this wire, we basically, Jewish law is often quite pragmatic, so it doesn't insist on building the wall. You see this wire, and then we see this wire, and then we imagine that there is a mechitza, that there is a wall around the neighborhood, and then we are within the wall, and then we can carry things. So the landlord, the Polish landlord, he looks at them and says, okay, good. So, well, if you can look at this wire and imagine that there is a wall, in fact, why you can't just look into thin air and imagine there is a wire? So, that's the story. And what the story is about? I think the story is about imagination. It's about imagination, or what things we can imagine which do not exist in fact. And I think the whole discussion about data spaces is sorely lacking imagination. Because data spaces are a fantastic opportunity to really think what we would like to get from heritage data, from heritage ecosystems, from collaboration. What is your ultimate dream? What is your crazy desire to do with heritage? And too often, when we think about what we can build with technology and collaboration, we are still rooted in the old models. We are trying to replicate things from the past, models from the past, using technology to give them fancy names, to give them some fresh paint, but that's not really, that's not entirely new, right? So if I ask you if everything was possible, what would you do? And then I'm not sure that, I won't say, a portal or an app, right? I would think about, well, I have my ideas, I have my approach, but I would think about something which is not similar to things we had in the past. So I really invite you to think beyond replicating the old ways of working. And for example, data sharing is a concept which is like 15, 20 years old. What is really possible with technology? What is really possible? Even don't think about technology. What is your ultimate dream? And then technology, which is so advanced these days, and can do way more if we only allow to dream. So what does it really mean that to have all the riches of cultural heritage, for Jewish or other kind at our fingertips? What does it really mean to you? How do you experience it? How does it change your life? So we had a kickoff meeting of a big project last week, and the very important word which was repeated, was requirements. What are your requirements? So once you can think about big ideas, we can think about requirements, and then we can bring it to engineers, to technologists, and we will be surprised by how much more is possible than what we think is. And when we start thinking in this way, then the first thing we basically rethink is geographical space. Because the way today heritage is very much organized around jurisdictions, geographical jurisdictions, thematic jurisdictions. Well, in fact, Jewish heritage, right, has very little to do with modern European borders. Whatever chapter of Jewish heritage you take, whether the Lithuanian tradition or whether the Sephardic heritage, it has very, very little to do with today's geographical borders in Europe, which define to a large extent how we build those collaborations, how we build these data spaces. So that's one, the same way as those Jews who came to the Polish landlord and reimagined their space, rebuild their space through imagination, the same way we should look at the geographical space in which heritage is present, and to think about new ways to organize it, to think as if there are no borders. And Jewish, in this sense, to inspire us for this kind of thinking, Jewish heritage is a primary example because there is literally very little corners, very little spots on the European land when there is no Jewish, when there was no Jewish heritage, no Jewish life. And the same goes for Holocaust memory, because wherever there was Jewish life, almost everywhere, especially in this country, in country where I live, in the Netherlands, it was all almost entirely annihilated. So in all those places where there was heritage, there are now traces that we should remember. We should remember not only the annihilation of Jewish heritage, we should also remember the life that was there. And the project which was presented just before the break about Stolperstein is a very good example. So you have I don't know, don't judge never try this app, whether it's good or bad. I hope it's interesting, it's engaging, but the border of this app currently stops at the border between Netherlands and Germany, whereas in fact Stolpersteine are present in many European countries. So that's a very good example that we should rethink how we treat space. And our first speaker is a person who has a primary capacity to tell us about how to map Holocaust memory in space, because she's working a lot on that. So, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Dr. Aleksandra Janus from Zapomniane Foundation, researcher, curator, activist working on memory and connection between past and present from the perspective of institutions, audiences, and civic engagement. Ola, please.
Thank you. Okay, can you hear me? Yeah, thank you so much. And I will be talking about the digital as not as a point of arrival, but as a point of departure for engaging audiences offline and actually activating online archives through arts, crafts, and social engagement. The Zapomniane Foundation deals with burial sites, uncommemorated, unmarked burial sites of the Holocaust victims on the territory of Poland. So we locate and mark sites like this, and this in this case is a burial site of 4 Jewish men. There are over 1,500 of such uncommemorated and unmarked sites on the territory of this country. So what we do is we study them, we gather knowledge about them, we generate knowledge about them, and we created this online archive that is a shared resource where you can find information about these locations, all the knowledge that we have about them, heritage resources that are related to them, and you can also find a way to get to all of these sites. So far we have located over 300 of them. And we have been working with this online archive for a very long time until, and we also gather, we generate all sorts of data because we research these locations using such technologies as ground-penetrating radar, LiDAR, so laser scan of the topography to determine the location of the burial sites, as well as historical aerial photos, sometimes private archives, resources from private archives or like institutional archives, as well as private objects such as hand-drawn maps created by local representatives of local communities. So these are types of the resources that you can find in this online archive. And what we are trying to do is we also are trying to bring these resources back to the concrete geographies of these sites, because oftentimes they're completely disattached from these locations. So we started using crafts and co-creations as a way of bringing these resources, this knowledge back to the geography of the actual sites and engaging local communities in changing the landscape of these often uncommemorated sites. And one of the ways in which we do that, we bring the knowledge that is gathered in the archive, some resources, and we invite the members of the local non-Jewish Polish communities into creating markers with us. And we have a portable laser cut device that we bring with us. And we co-create these markers that mark the locations of these burial sites, also adding the information from the archive into the physical objects, such as these temporary monuments. What we also do is we use arts and artistic interventions to transmit the knowledge from the online archive into the physical space. We collaborate with many Jewish artists, and again, we use the knowledge gathered in the archive in order to, for example, determine the perimeter of the site, to change how the site looks like and how it functions in the local community. And these are like multiple ways and multiple artistic tools that we use to actually transmit the knowledge back to the concrete geography. And this changes these sites. So then the data, the knowledge, the archival records that we have is brought back to the location in order to change and mark it. And Eruv was mentioned already here. So this is a project that we did yesterday when a Jewish artist, Alex Roth, actually created an Eruv using actual strings around a huge burial site, unmarked burial site in the forest, not far away from Krakow, and invited local community to participate in this sound installation. That was for the first time in their case, they were able to experience the actual size of the burial site and the actual, sort of like to understand the space in a new way, because we used the coordinates, the very precise geographical coordinates from our online archive, and we transmitted them into the physical space together with the artist who created this like very abstract musical instrument as an Eruv in that particular site. So you can see the local members of the local community also discovering this space in the new way. Another tool that we use to work and experiment with the data that we gathered and we collect are obviously exhibitions, and this is an exhibition that is still on show at Caserne d'Ossel in Belgium, where we again use the data that we generated and collected and exhibited for the audiences to be able to interact with it in new ways, also using art installations as these hanging panels that you can see over here. This is, again, Landscape Archive is the title of the exhibition. And last but not least, we also are trying to use analog data visualizations as a way of creating opportunities for the audiences to actually better understand the data that we generate and make available through the online archive. And in the right-hand side corner, you can see the GPR, ground penetrating radar data transmitted into a sculpture that the audience can look from different sides and also like better understand what these very often abstract images actually mean, because we use ground penetrating radar to determine anomalies underground to be able to determine the location of the burial site. So to sum up, we're using these arts, crafts, and social engagement to bridge the online and offline worlds and reconnect data to its geographical context. We use data and online resources as foundations for creative and artistic practice. And we promote artistic research and curate the data within physical spaces. And it is important for us, especially when we bring the data back to its geographical context, because then it helps us generate new knowledge, because very often when we use that as an excuse to meet with the local communities, they share with us new information about other similar sites around their town or village or a city. So it's very much also a participatory process of data gathering. And we do that as part of like 3 EU-funded projects, not exclusively, but mostly. And we also created this difficult heritage remembrance framework. It's a guidebook where you can find more information about some examples that I have just shown. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I think wonderful project which has it all, from mapping to experience. And I think experience is really key to what we should dream for, having mapped, having found, having digitized heritage materials. Because honestly, when you have materials, you don't dream about portals, right? I mean, portals are important, we should do them, but I don't think that should be the end game. And the end game is really experience, how we experience heritage in our everyday life. We are, after all, physical creatures. We are not, with digital revolution, we are not turned into some kind of, we're not sucked into our screens. We still travel, study, read, learn. So I think experience is really a key to tapping into the potential of heritage for society. And our next speaker will talk about another wonderful example of how reconstructing musical heritage can be brought to actual circumstances and instances of music today. Our next speaker is Dr. Aleksandra Kumala, cultural studies scholar, lead researcher at FestivALT Association, member of Research Center for Memory Cultures at Jagiellonian University, and research lead at the newly formed European Sites of Holocaust and something memory. Please, Aleksandra.
Yes, thank you. So before I tell you more about the project itself, I would like to give you a little bit of the project background and the perspective that from which we've started. So the project was held in Chrzanów, which happens to be my hometown, and the pre-war population, the pre-war Jewish population of Chrzanów was approximately 8,000, and it formulated about 50% of the whole of the city population. So we've been working a lot with the city as FestivALT, and in this project, we will kind of building on the already existing cooperations with the local municipality, local library, museum, and all the other cultural institutions. And what we wanted to do was to make use of the potential of local Jewish microhistories and contexts and kind of move a bit away from the context of the Holocaust and engage the local community more in celebrating the multicultural and also Jewish heritage of the city. And how we approach this idea was through the Bakon family, Hirsch Leib Bakon was a renewed cantor who for many, many years was appointed at Bet Midrash in Chrzanów, and some of his notes, sheets of notes, survived the war. Some of them were written out of memory of his son and published in a book in the 90s. So that was kind of our first source. And one of his sons, Israel, who was born in Chrzanów, was lucky enough to record a record. He was also a cantor in Hazan, and he recorded an album in the late 30s in Berlin and sent this album to his family to the US. And that's how his music survived, and that was our second source of inspiration. So what we envisioned was kind of an interdisciplinary preservation of this heritage, and besides of the archival research that I conducted, we also conducted an ethnomusicological research, and for this we invited the Moshe Band, which is a Slovak Jewish band who specifies in current in performing the traditional Jewish music, but in new arrangements. So we invited them for the project, but we also invited a female cantor based in the UK, Rachel Weston, because we wanted to create, based on the existing materials, kind of new arrangements of this music. And we also invited Polish-Jewish artist Hanna Kosowska, who created this beautiful, as you can see in the slide, beautiful visual identity of the project based on the only surviving photo of Cantor Hirsch Leib Bakon. And we also engaged a lot with the researchers and local community, and as I said, local authorities, but we also wanted to engage with international audiences. And how we did it was through conducting online and on-site activities. So first of all, the research findings were published online, but they were also presented on-site in the Chrzanów library for the local community to get the chance to know more about the history of the Bakon family, about the history of the synagogue music, and about cantors and Hazanut. And then we also launched a social media campaign so we can reach different target groups with this project. As you can imagine, the synagogue music may not be like the first choice, for example, for the teenagers in Chrzanów. So we wanted to find a way to get them to know about this project and about this local history. And we also conducted an online Zoom meeting for international audiences, and we invited for this the members of the Moshe Band and Rachel Weston for them to talk about the project and about the music. And I talked a little bit about the history of the Bakon family. And there was also a project trailer released on YouTube, again, to reach broader audiences. But what was the most important part of the project was the recording of the new arrangements of the compositions of both Cantor Hirsch Leib Bakon and his son Israel. And this was done by Moshe Band and by Rachel Weston. And the compositions premiered in Chrzanów, which was also very important for us, for this music and for this heritage to be presented again in the local context and in the place from where it originated. And I think when it comes to the project impact and the project goals, what was important for us was to activate all of these different layers of this project and to facilitate different kinds of interactions with it for elderly people, like the lecture and the concert, but also for younger audiences via the social media channels. And we also just wanted, as I said, to celebrate this heritage and not only to mourn the victims of the Holocaust. And for us, the digital was first and foremost a tool for increasing the accessibility of this heritage and also of the project findings and of the local microhistory that could have been discovered thanks to this project. And I think it was received quite well and enthusiastic from in the Chrzanów audiences. And what I can share with you on the ending now is that there's a Jewish Festival of Art and Activism starting in 1 week in Krakow, which we're hosting as FestivALT. And Rachel Weston and Moishe Band will open this festival with these arrangements of Hirsch Leib Bakon and Israel Bakon. So this legacy lives on, and I think that's the most important outcome for us. Thank you.
Thank you, Aleksandra. Yeah, I think it's a very powerful example of how you bring it back to the experience in that place, not only mourning the past, but also looking to the future. And now that hopefully you've got tons of inspiration about how we can collect heritage in space, preserve it, and build experiences on top of that, with it, you might ask ourselves, okay, so what's the way forward? What's the implementation strategy? And here, whatever we do, it must go through many, many small, medium, and big organizations, communities, stakeholders, individual researchers, volunteer organizations. So it's a very hugely diverse landscape in front of us that we need to engage. And that actually also requires a lot of imagination. So I think there is this kind of mindset which sometimes you can see that, yeah, we need to bring all this content somehow with governance schemes and standards, and then the fun begin. No, I think the fun is actually engaging them. I think that's the part which requires a lot of creativity, a lot of resourcefulness, and that's an integral part of the heritage innovation game. And also there's this refrain always that about digital skill gap, that there is this gap that we need to cover, or there is this lack of resources. This you can always see that in all the proposals and calls. And honestly, I think it's a bit tired story. There always be a skill gap, and heritage organizations will always be under-resourced. Let's face that. But nevertheless, we still have so much creativity and resourcefulness that we are still lacking on engaging them. We should adopt much more decentralized approaches, where things like what you saw today, where actually there's a lot of decision power and tools and ownership, which is in places, in sites, rather than in hands of some central authority. We should work way more with software vendors. Not the big tech that we want, that are the bad guys, as you heard today, but just vendors that are very often stay outside the circle of innovation. So I don't know, for European people in the room, I think the most innovative European project ever has been European Inside, many, many years ago, which tried to actually work through software companies with which many organizations are working. And so I think we need to be very present in everyday life of this very diverse group of stakeholders, present first as observers to understand how they work, then as partners, and then as innovators. And our third speaker is introducing the project, who was literally present in sites of many in many places in Poland which have Jewish history. So the project is Museum on the Wheels by this museum, by the POLIN Museum. And please welcome Marcin Lewicki, who is working at the museum as responsible for digital collections, online publishing portal, and who has been the main coordinator of this project. Please, Marcin.
And now? Yes. Yeah, okay. Hello, my name is Marcin Lewicki. I have been a coordinator of Collection on Wheels project that I will present you as a way to share local Jewish heritage online. The goal of the project was to gather as many as possible institutions, museums, but not only, that possess Jewish collections, collections of objects related to Jewish historical heritage here in Poland. We have cooperated with over 20 partners, but the list is not closed. I mean, we want to work on the next year, so we hope the span of our cooperation will be bigger and it will increase in time. We have visited 12 institutions where we digitized 1,700 objects that were all published online in our collection portal that is the main output of the project. Moreover, there you can find 5,000 objects from the POLIN Museum, as well as if you're interested in how to deal with museum objects, museum collections, you can have a look in our 3 online publications on that. Here you can see a list of our partners and a map to see spots and geographical boundaries of our project. As I said, it is still under construction. I mean, we want to cooperate with another institutions and other museums to make as many collections as possible to be seen, to be vivid. So, as I said, we aimed to make hidden collections, hidden in museum storages, visible for all the people who are interested in them, for scholars, for wide range, public, etc. We have published them all in our internet portal that you can easily find via the POLIN Museum website. You will be redirected to the collections portal. And there you can find all these local collections using filters, like on this slide where you can see objects from the local museum in Chrzanów, in the town that the previous speaker was talking about. So the outcome of our project let us see how diversified is the history of Polish Jews, depending on the region, depending on the town, depending on local stories. The tool we use is quite conservative and humble, I would say, referring to what Pavel has just said about infinite possibilities of technology nowadays. Anyway, we focused on something that nowadays maybe it's not very impressive, but it is a tool that is pragmatic and realistic to make all these objects be visible and be accessible to learn about, to teach about, to learn many local Jewish stories from all around Poland. And now, we are aware that nowadays we feel a kind of pressure to be online. It is a context of our job. Anyway, we believe that what we show, what we present, are images of material objects. And what we encourage people to do is to learn their histories and maybe to have a look inside where they are placed and stored. I mean, to visit all these spots if it is possible to someone. We do know that many researchers have up to now already used these tools. They had a possibility to find some material for the research, etc. So it is already working, and if it inspires someone to get to go there, to see it with your own eyes, that would be something we would be very happy about, and that would somehow be a great fruit of our job. So the basic aim and the basic idea is to provide infrastructure that is still open, and if anyone would like to cooperate to work with us, please feel welcome and contact us to make our database bigger, stronger, and more visible, and having more and more content. Thank you.
Thank you, Marcin. I think that mere presence at the website is already a very big step forward, so the gap might not be that big. Okay, we are wonderfully on time for several questions from the audience that will hopefully be inspired by the projects that you have just heard about. So we'll first start with questions from the room to the speakers. Please.
Hello. Hi, my name's George. I work at the Flickr Foundation, flickr.org. I had a question for you, the first speaker, kind of reacting to the conversation in the room about, this myth that more data will make more understanding or more meaning, which is just crazy talk. I really love the way that you're making art to visualize stories and digital information. I think that's beautiful work. The question is, I'm curious to know how you gather and process the stories and information that come from these interactive exercises with people. What do you do with those things? Does it become re-digital, or just say a bit more, please?
We have to bring the microphone back. Oh. At least, no problem.
I saw another microphone.
I know, but this one works.
Thank you so much. Thank you for that question. So, yeah, so we use that indeed as a way of generating new knowledge, or like gathering new knowledge. And what we usually do is we collect stories, or sometimes even notification about concrete sites. And then we have a team of researchers that follows up and researches these stories. And then not all of them, but some of them end up in our digital archive, because in many cases, we have the stories and then we collect them, but they are not leading us to concrete sites. And we are, sites are the most important, burial sites, like locating the burial sites are the most important thing. So we collect some of the stories and we share them with researchers if we're unable to link this story to a concrete site. But luckily, in some cases, we are able to actually discover new burial sites, locate them, verify them, and then commemorate them, thanks to that. And I think, I agree with what you started with. I mean, it's true that this doesn't generate new knowledge, like in general, but I think these intimate situations are a way of, like, for people to open up and for the knowledge that has been there to emerge or to become public. And I think this is something that is really interesting. And that's why I think art in general is a great tool for that, because it creates platforms for this type of exchanges. And I think that's sort of what we have been experiencing as successful.
Thank you. Other questions from the audience? No? Then I have a question. Actually, also to there is one. No, actually, also to Aleksandra, to you. So one of the, as I mentioned, we had a kickoff of the project, about last week. It's called European Memory Data Space, and one of the main discussions there was what's between Holocaust memory and cultural heritage, because there are a lot of shared layers, there are a lot of shared materials, but it still feels very, very different. So my question to you is what practices from your work do you think can be reused also outside the domain of Holocaust memory, or maybe even outside Poland? Oh, sorry.
I think that's true that there is some overlap, and obviously, in our case, we mostly work with sites that are like, we cannot research them with traditional archaeological tools. That's why we have to generate all that digital data, because we have to use non-invasive forensic tools, because the Jewish religious law prevents us for interfering with the burial sites. So we not only work with heritage objects or heritage resources, but we also generate a lot of technical data that is not necessarily needed, if you just study heritage sites, not Holocaust sites, where human remains might be deposited. But I think what is an overlap, what can be used from our practices, is this idea of like creating spaces for people to exchange or for the knowledge to emerge. And I wanted to quote one project of a friend of mine. It was like a nomadic shtetl archive by Natalia Romik, Dr. Natalia Romik. And she actually traveled with like an artistic installation from a former shtetl to a former shtetl, stopping this artistic installation that was also like on wheels at the center of the village, and inviting people to discover e-score books, but also like inviting them to also bring some heritage objects or stories from where they live, sometimes from their houses, homes, sometimes from what they remembered, and sort of like creating this like shtetl archive in the process that starts with an artistic installation. And I think there is something very powerful about like discovering also the history and the heritage, Jewish heritage, through this type of practice.
Thank you very much. We have time for one more question. If there is nothing from the audience, then I have it. Oh, there is one from the audience.
Thank you for your presentation. So the question is for all the speakers. As we're talking about Jewish heritage, it's not really fully correct to talk about Polish Jews. It's more correctly to talk about Jews of former Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth, etc. So the question is, what's your perspective on how these modern administrative borders could be overcome with when you study like heritage? Yeah, I mean, how can you work with let's say Lithuanian, Belarus, and Ukrainian experts on this topic? Is it their issue to study Jewish heritage on their territories, or is there a way to do it all together? Thank you.
Well, if I might start. I can think of the example of Moishe Band, which was like already discussed, because they are a Jewish band based in Slovakia, but what they are doing mostly is proposing new arrangements of the Hungarian Jewish music heritage. So I think that through international collaborations with the artists, or as you said, with the researchers, it can be a way of blending all of these stories and in different, geographically different types of Jewish heritage into one or two or like 10 projects. So for us at FestivALT, this kind of interdisciplinary and international collaborations have been, I think, the key answer, and not only in this project, but also in many other, and also engaging Rachel Weston to this project was again another way of broadening the scope of the research, but also of the different perspective and voices within this project, because we have like this Galician heritage, but also like this female cantor based in the UK, and the Slovak Jewish band that is on a daily basis dealing with Hungarian Jewish heritage, and we all came together for this project. So maybe that's the like one possible answer. Thank you.
Marcin, do you want to comment shortly?
Yeah, if it comes to my project, it has been only a local one. It is something I can just dream of to get it so big that it will go beyond the borders of Poland. But up to now, we have not such an experience. Thanks.
Thank you. Thanks. Well, do you want to comment? Okay, then please approach Ola for last comments. We need to wrap up the session. Let's thank our speakers first. And well, we hoped we inspired you for looking for a bit more imagination and inspiration in those data space projects that you will hear about a lot in the coming days. Thank you very much.